Well guys, I was really hoping I would never have to make this video. You've probably noticed a severe lack of uploads and content on the channel as of late, and today we'll be getting into why exactly that is. But quite frankly, Destiny has just departed from a game that I used to love into a new formula that Bungie has kind of adapted that honestly I just don't really recognize anymore. So let's start with kind of where my, I guess, apathetic nature towards the game really started to begin. So for that, we're going to head back to the launch of Edge of Fate. I think it's fair to say that Edge of Fate launched with mixed reviews. You know, it had some fresh systems, from the gear tiers to the portal and, you know, an actual reset to the power grind and things like that, which definitely was positively received at first, I would say. You know, I think for those who were super into the lore, I think the story gave people reasons to reinvest interest in the Destiny universe again, and it kind of gave stakes to where the story is going to be headed post Light and Dark Saga. There's also a ton of new loot, with new weapon archetypes like the shotgun hand cannon and the highly popular rocket pulses and things like that. And I would be lying if I said that the raid wasn't absolutely fantastic. It's probably my favorite raid that has ever been released in Destiny. I think the bosses are incredible. I love that it's non-linear and you can do it in any order that you choose. I think the mechanics are extremely fun and unique, and honestly, the feat system might be one of the best quality of life updates we've ever had in an in-game activity, period. And the portal had some serious potential. However, moving on to the negatives, we removed Grandmaster Nightfalls, which, as many of you guys will know on the channel, is kind of my bread and butter. It was one of my favorite things to do in the game, which I lived with, you know. We had conquests that came around, and people thought that that would kind of replace what the old Grandmaster system was, only to find out that those were only playable once a season, which has now been walked back and changed. You had the portal system that I think at first glance seemed cool, but you begin to realize how many things were sacrificed from the expansion itself to kind of put this content structure into the game. First and foremost, I found Mythic Kepler to be almost unplayable. Not because, you know, I can't survive there, but there's very little incentive to go to the planet, number one. Sieve, the activity that takes place on Kepler, only takes place every 90 minutes as some sort of like cap to how quickly you could level. And to be honest, a lot of the loot there just isn't really worth pursuing at all, at least outside of the loot cave that's been discovered. I think it's also fair to say that a lot of content was sacrificed in this vein because we got no new strikes, we got no new Crucible maps, and again, the destination, with the way that it's currently structured, is pretty much rendered useless, or could just be renamed to Caldera, because that's pretty much the only time anybody touches that planet outside of max level loot cave farming, which is definitely not intended. I also think you look at the number of cheaters during the day one raid race, with over half the clears under contest being cheated clears, and that they needed to rely on third-party API websites to help scrub through those cheaters to determine which runs were actually legitimate and which were not. And then you reach the 400 to 450 power grind. So, first of all, I'm not someone that will sit there all day and grind something repetitively just for the sake of grind something repetitively. Big number, go higher doesn't really interest me as a Destiny player. It's something that will keep me engaged if the systems implemented in the background are done well, and it feels like your time as a player is being valued. However, turns out that the portal is pretty one-dimensional. A lot of people turn towards solo leveling because in the Fire Team or Pinnacle Ops, we got rid of or nerfed several missions that people were farming, only to reintroduce them later due to backlash. It also turns out that solo leveling is by far just the most optimal, and that this portal that was deemed to kind of let you play the way that you want turns out to be exactly the opposite. It turned out to be a restrictive way that kind of pigeonholes you into a specific way to level most efficiently. So much so that people didn't even want to play your brand new endgame pinnacle activity in the Desert Perpetual raid. I found it almost impossible as a content creator with a full friends list to get people to want to raid because we can't get tier 5 gear from Desert Perpetual, at least up until Ash and Iron, which was a very hot topic for endgame players in general. Which made it not only less efficient in terms of gear pursuit, but it also took away from your chase to get to 450 power because you can't rerun raids with power bonuses on repeat clears. It will not help you level. So you're forced into what is essentially repetition in Caldera or K1 Logistics in the solo ops playlist, and that pretty much became the focal point of the DLC, was the grind to 450 power. And I hopped off that train at 400. I told myself I would get to 400, and anything beyond that was a bonus, because I was not going to subject myself to the 400 to 450 pinnacle power RNG grind that clearly does not value a player's time. Especially when you consider that in Ash and Iron, that power level number goes up again, and you'll need to do the same thing again. So at 400 power, I decided to take a break from the game. I said, maybe some time away from Destiny will do me good. I'll come back refreshed in Ash and Iron and, come back for this major update that they were hyping up as, a major update. Something that was comparable to Into the Light in terms of content size. Is the major update in the room with us right now? Because we logged on to the game, and it was a single story mission, a new activity that's far less efficient than all of the solo op leveling that you can do now, and an exotic mission that's been delayed for over a month, with the hard mode raid not being released for more than 2 weeks after the launch of Ash and Iron. So when I hopped off the train at 400 power, I thought, what's the point if the power band is just going to go up again and we're going to have to do this again at the pinnacle cap in 2 weeks' time? So I took a break. And during my time off, I was already kind of exhausted by the game, right? But taking a healthy break like any Destiny player should, in my opinion, when you're not finding the game enjoyable. And while I'm gone, there are multiple TWIDs that release that are so incredibly tone deaf to what the community has been asking for since the launch of Edge of Fate that, quite honestly, I thought it was April Fool's Day. I could not believe what I was reading. We not only found out that Not Swap would be incorporated into the Epic Raid after basically being downvoted into oblivion the first time that it made its way into the game, but we also found out that Bungie was going to nerf solo ops leveling. Instead of bringing other things up to the potency in fireteam-based activities to help alleviate some of the leveling pain points that so many players had been complaining about since the launch of Edge of Fate. And it just made my disdain for the game grow even more. And then in a following TWID, we found out that the Epic Raid race had been moved another week. And so many players who had already scheduled time off based on their previous announcement of the Epic Raid date just 1 week prior, now aren't able to compete because they've already requested a different weekend off, and we're already so close to that raid's date that they pretty much have no flexibility to request a different weekend off at their jobs. And then came Destiny Rising, which many people kind of thought would be a bit of a meme as a mobile-only game, but it turned out to be pretty damn good, with a lot of systems that Destiny players and long-term fans of the franchise had been asking for a very long time, and that the main game had failed to deliver, including new game modes, reworks to Gambit, and so much more. Turns out the game is actually pretty damn good, and Bungie seems to be pretty concerned about being shown up by a mobile predecessor to their main franchise. Which then led to following TWIDs, where they pretty much walked back all of the changes they had proposed because of how negatively received everything was. And to me, it's fine for you to make a mistake. I totally understand that. I make mistakes all the time. What I'm not quite okay with is the fact that some of these proposed changes in these TWIDs regarding leveling even made it into drafts in the first place. How did we get to a point where we thought that nerfing solo ops was the best, most optimal way to go with the community at that time? That sentiment would somehow be positively received instead of lifting up other areas in the game. When something in the game is run repetitively over and over and over again, it is a clear indicator of poor game design, and it is not at the fault of the player for them to play in the most optimal fashion. Other areas of the game needed to be brought up, not nerfed, how they had done already with things like Encore, as well as now with solo ops. So my disdain for the game continued to grow. And then we received the hype trailer for Ash and Iron, and honestly I was pretty excited because it looked like we were getting a cool new unique exotic type with the axe that was going to be brought to the game, a new exotic mission, which is always super hype. I always love that type of content. We were getting new story beats, we were getting new activity to grind, portal changes, but then you start to realize that a lot of what they were talking about was coming in Renegades and not in Ash and Iron itself. But then we find out during the reveal stream on Tuesday with the launch of Ash and Iron that the exotic mission is actually not going to be ready for an entire month, which essentially meant that the promotional material used just days before to try and hype up this major update was basically just a ploy to get people to log into the game on Tuesday and get people reinvested and playing Destiny again, instead of playing things like Borderlands 4 or Destiny Rising, or the other slew of games that have come out recently, such as Silksong and several others. And to me, that is just unacceptable behavior and is an absolute slap in the face to your community. I'm totally understanding of things needing to be delayed to be fully fleshed out, but when they released that promotional material just a few days before, they knew damn well that that exotic mission was not going to be ready to go, yet they decided to use that promotional material and not mention anything about it anyway. And to me, that's just not okay. Right now, I don't feel respected as a member of this community, and I don't feel that my time is being taken seriously as a player. They expect us to log in kind of no matter what they throw our direction, and that we'll continue to play the game no matter what because we're longtime Destiny fans. Well, I'm kind of done with that, to be honest. I'm kind of fed up with where the game is at, and I'm taking a personal stand, as I'm sure many of you guys have over the last 2 to 3 months anyway. I'm extremely excited for Renegades. I think a lot of what they announced in terms of portal changes and quality of life updates to the game are going to be extremely healthy and beneficial to where the game needs to be right now, but it's not for 3 months. I logged into Ash and Iron on Tuesday. I ran the mission in the tower. I then did the seasonal activity a single time and saw that it was far less rewarding than just running solo ops yet again, and basically logged out an hour later. And some of you guys will probably say, oh, you're just burnt out on Destiny. Listen, man, I am a 10,000 hour player of this franchise. I've created content on this game for 6 years now, 4 of which have been full-time, and I'm blessed to say that I've ever had the opportunity to do so, and a lot of it is due to your guys' support here on YouTube. And I hope you guys understand I'm coming from a place where I want this game to succeed, and I want our players' time to be fully respected and players' feedback to truly be heard. And quite frankly, it feels like they're grasping at straws to try and essentially prevent a full-blown Sony takeover at this point. And so here's where I stand with Destiny and the future of this channel moving forward. I'm not closing the door on Destiny entirely. If there is content that I feel like is worth making, I will go ahead and make it, whether that be the epic raid in 2 weeks, or the exotic mission a month from now and you guys want a guide on that, or something else that piques my interest, but I'm not going to sit here and subject you guys to content that's basically just made to help sustain the channel during the downtimes in Destiny until the next major expansion. It's not fair to me, it's not fair to you guys, and I'm not going to sit here and create content that makes myself and the viewers unhappy. I want to create content that adds value to you guys and doesn't just pass some time. With all of that being said, I'm not closing the door on Destiny. I'm open to creating content in Renegades, and I think that a lot of those changes are actually going to be really positive for the game. I know a lot of people are playing Borderlands right now. I'm not a huge Borderlands guy myself, but we have things like Battlefield 6 upcoming, as well as Arc Raiders, which will likely be a massive focus on the channel, because it's a game I've been following for years and am extremely excited about to cover here on the channel in the future. And if you guys haven't heard of it, I essentially think of it as kind of the counterpart to Expedition 33 and how it changed people's opinions on turn-based combat. That's how I feel with Arc Raiders in terms of third-person combat and extraction shooters. I think it's going to be a fantastic entry point. Its universe is interesting, and I'll be linking videos down below from Jack Frags as to what makes the game so truly special. We'll be following up with new player guides, news updates, tips, tricks, and everything else you guys can think of leading up to the launch on October 30th. With all of that being said, guys, thank you for supporting me and this channel. Thank you for watching my videos all these years, and I hope you guys will join me on the next chapter of our journey as we begin to spread our wings into new content. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I love and appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.